Hey guys, happy Halloween Eve. Tomorrow is the big day. It's going to be Friday tomorrow, so I feel like it's a nice little segue to talk about Friday the 13th, mostly Jason Voorhees' hockey mask. Now, for the longest time, I had very surface level knowledge about the history of the hockey mask because much like the Michael Myers masks, Freddy Krueger's infamous glove, they changed throughout the films. With the exception of Halloween 1 and 2 and Elm Street 1 and 2 where they used the same mask and the same glove. But an opportunity came up where I wanted to talk about the screen-used hockey masks. And I got in contact with someone very famous in the collecting world when it comes to screen-used Friday the 13th props. And going through the timeline of events with how the masks were made, what the masks were derived from, it's actually quite incestuous. So I'm actually going to be touching on the hockey masks from Friday the 13th Part 3, all the way up to Freddy versus Jason. Now keep in mind, with Freddy versus Jason and Jason X, those masks have no lineage to the previous masks. You can say that inspiration was used for the Freddy vs. Jason mask. Now when it comes to the remake mask from 2009, I'm not going to be including that or really delving into that because again, that was completely made from scratch and also it's just the remake, so I kind of just put it on its own, much like the Elm Street remake from 2010. So I'm going to be referencing a website and a book. So the book is the Friday the 13th Props Museum book, The Collection of Mario Kirner. So I've been talking on and off to Mario and he was gracious enough to send this beautiful coffee table book that has extensive history, photos of the screen used masks, costumes, scripts, storyboards, other various props. So even though Mario has sold most of his collection, offered it to other collectors, he still has a few pieces here and there remaining that he just wanted to hold on to. Most notably the hero Jason Goes to Hell hockey mask and Kane Hodder's script from that film. This is still a beautiful keepsake. Now, the other point of reference I'm going to be using throughout this video is the Jason Lives Since 1980s Friday the 13th blog. There is an extensive history of the hockey mask, and so much so he's even gone above and beyond and made a timeline, which I'll be going over at the end of this video. Or I guess you could say it's more like a family tree of just how incestuous these hockey masks are and like they're derived from previous ones, used for inspiration, molded, stuff like that, which is fascinating because most times out of 10 these hockey masks were left laying around, and then when the next one geared up, the next Friday the 13th film geared up for that matter, they'd use that one as inspiration or reference or mold it, stuff like that. And you can see features that are carried over from a previous mask onto the other. But let's go all the way back to Friday the 13th, Part 3. Now, obviously, we're not going to be including Friday the 13th, Part 1, because we see a very young Jason come out of the water, and Friday the 13th, Part 2, we have Sackhead Jason. So Friday the 13th, Part 3. At this point, during makeup tests on Richard Brooker, they didn't really know which direction they were going to go in terms of a mask. It was stated that Jason was going to be wearing something, but during these stages, these tests, with Richard Brooker, Steve Miner, the effects crew, they didn't really know. And with that, 3D supervisor Martin Sadoff went to his car and pulled a vintage Red Wings goalie mask out of a bag that was in the back of his car. And this is because Steve Miner and some of the effects crew had a hockey team at the time. And he just figured it's a good placeholder, popped it on Richard Brooker. Steve Miner really liked it. He goes, this is a good starting point, but I feel like it needs to be improved upon. Certain areas need to be changed. So let's use another goalie mask as reference. So the original hero mask from Friday the 13th Part 3 is actually derived from a vintage 1970s Fibro Sports Elite mask. Now, some modifications were made to make it fit the undermask and look fuller on screen on Richard Brooker's head, like with the makeup. Now, this included adding a wider perimeter and enlarging the mask overall, and the mask was said to have been pulled very, very thin in a clear acrylic. Now, this is where it gets really sad. The hero mask does not exist anymore. Now, not only was this mask seen throughout most of the film, the mask was later modified and used for the Part 4 VHS cover and posters. It's also the mask in the opening credits of Part 4. It was worn by an unknown crew member during the scene where Jason destroys Rob's gun in Part 4. It was also used in the Part 4 TV spot from 1984 to 1985 and also made appearances on several Part 5 posters. So it had a pretty good shelf life. It still could have existed today had it not been nailed on the front of Real Effects' building. And due to how the sun works with UV, it broke the mask down, and in the 1980s, it was essentially tossed in the trash, which is super sad. But keep in mind, back then, and as some of the crew members stated, these are just props. Back in the day, they just didn't treat them as priceless artifacts like they are today. There was a silver lining though. The stunt mask that was used in part 3 for various scenes, most notably the end, went on to be the hero mask in part 4, which in my opinion is my favorite looking hockey mask, my favorite look of Jason, and my favorite Friday the 13th film. Now, not only being used throughout Friday the 13th Part 4, it was also used in certain sequences in Friday the 13th Part 5, most notably the hospital scene. Now, after filming on Part 5 wrap, the mask was given to the film's stunt coordinator, Dick Warlock, aka Michael Myers from Halloween 2. Next up, we have the TV spot mask. Now, keep note of this one, because this one plays an integral part with a few other hockey masks. So this was derived from the Part 3 mold. From what I've read and from what also the blog suggests, it was never used in Part 3, but the size, shape, and sharpness of the eye sockets suggest it was pulled from the original mold. So it's seen in one scene in Part 5. It was also used in a TV spot for Part 5 in 1985 to 1986. Now, the mask also likely served as both paint reference for Part 6. So you can see it right here on the head of Bill Forsh during pre-production of Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives. So again, you can see this family tree of timeline of how all these masks are from essentially the same family. Now cut to Friday the 13th Part 5 from 1985, and this is something I knew in the back of my head, but I completely forgot. Makeup artist David Miller, that's right, the original designer of Freddy's makeup, made the hockey mask for Friday the 13th Part 5. I actually really have a soft spot for this particular hockey mask. I don't know why. I think it's because of the different looking chevrons. The blue is a nice touch with the chevrons as well. It just really stands out to me. Now, supposedly David Miller was given the mold from Part 3 to use as reference to make the masks for Part 5. Now, the Part 5 masks that were made for production were likely pulled from .090 black ABS, given the little glimpses we see of the back. It shows a black surface, which indicates ABS, usually. Now, investigating further, it seems like the Part 3 stunt mask, which wound up to be the hero mask from Part 4, was given to Miller as reference for Part 5. Now, David Miller also told the Jason Lives Since 1980 blog post in an email how he painted the hockey mask for the film, which is actually pretty cool and pretty simple. So he goes on to say, Miller also painted them using more or less the same techniques employed by most mask artists today. It's just layers of acrylic paint washes applied with a sea sponge. No secrets, each layer needs to dry before the next one is applied. As for the specific colors, he said, a little burnt umber mixed with burnt sienna for the grime, and a final really thin wash of raw sienna to give it a slight, subtle yellow tone. I love that. It's simplicity, but it just looks so damn good and reads well on camera. Okay, we're gonna get to Friday the 13th Part 6, and this is where we're gonna be utilizing this beautiful coffee table book by Mario Kirner. So as you can see, there are some beautiful behind the scenes photos here of Gabe Bartalos with one of the castings on his face. Now, from what I can see, Mario had 3 hockey masks in his collection. So various ones. There's one with the propeller damage, the bullet wound. So we have the back of the hockey masks and the front of the hockey masks. Now, yesterday I put that video up of my Freddy Krueger sweater piece from Part 4 from Bill Forsh. Well, there is Bill right there with a photo that I utilized in that video. So he was tasked with helping create and paint the hockey masks for Part 6. So Mario goes on to say in his book, Gabe Bartalos of Real Effects pulled 12 masks in total. 11 were made during the initial run, and one that was made in post-production for the intro shot of Jason. Special makeup artist Bill Forsh was responsible for the paintwork completed on all of the acrylic plastic masks. Now, not only that, there was the specific mask that Alice Cooper holds when he was doing the album shoot for the song He's Back, The Man Behind the Mask, and Mario also includes a whole bunch of photo sets, films, slides, negatives, and stuff like that from that particular shoot. Now, the Jason Lives Since 1980 blog post also goes on to say about the Part 6 masks. These masks were likely recast from the TV spot mask. Remember that one I mentioned before? As mentioned above, there were 12 masks pulled during production by Gabe Bartalos, painted by Bill Forsh. They were pulled in clear acrylic, somewhat thicker than earlier masks, probably a .090 ABS plastic. Painted white on the back and weathered in the front using yellow and brown oil washes. Now, photos taken during the process show Forsh used an old epoxy spray paint called Zionite on the mask and may have finished them with a Krylon Karma varnish, which is really cool. I love hearing stuff like that. Even though these products are long out of production, they don't make them anymore, it's still cool to know what they used back in the day, and you can find other variations to this day. Okay, now we're moving on to Friday the 13th Part 7, the New Blood. And what I love about this book, it has these beautiful fold-out pages of Mario's full collection, like the costume, the hockey mask, boots if they are there, everything. Now, next to the Part 4 mask, the Part 7 mask is actually my favorite as well. I really have a soft spot for it. I think it's also because of the brilliant makeup that John Carl Buechler, who also directed the film, designed. It just, when you have a makeup artist directing a film, you know the look of the creature is going to look damn impressive. Now, Mario goes on to say, John Carl Buechler decided to create a dirty white version of the hockey mask to resemble a real human skull. Additionally, he cut down the overall shape of the mask to allow more of the makeup appliances surrounding it to lay over the edges of the mask. A nylon mesh was fixed over one eye hole and cut inside the mask to cover the actor's left eye. This enhanced the effect of the skull design. The actor's right eye was covered with a blurred contact lens, so aka Kane Hodder. Only 2 hockey masks were created for use in filming of all scenes. One of the 2 only appeared when it split in half on the screen towards the end of the movie. This is underscored by the fact that the primary mask was damaged during several scenes. Another point in which the mask received some scratches around the mouth and nose area is a scene in which the roof fell down on actor Kane Hodder. So it's pretty cool, and I'll show the photos from the prop store auction. Those particular scratches on the mouth and the nose were added during production, like real scratches from these stunts. They weren't added before, which is really cool. It has that nice bit of continuity of like real world damage to the mask. Now, the blog post also goes on to say, in addition, the crew painted at least 10 masks that were given away for promotional purposes. And here's a shot of crew member Mickey Henson dremeling the ABS blanks back in 1988. I love seeing stuff like this. It's so cool that some of the crew just came around and were snapping photos of their fellow crew members working on these pieces. And there you can see some of the promo masks from back in the day, which are in various collections now. Okay, moving on to Jason Takes Manhattan. Another beautiful fold-out page there of Mario's incredible Jason Takes Manhattan costume, including the hero hockey mask, one of the hockey masks used in the film. There's a nice beautiful shot of the mask in all its glory. Again, it just differs so much from the other masks, and I think that's what sets it apart, like the yellow look, the inverted chevrons, the shape. Now, the shape looks a little familiar. That's because supposedly it was derived from a Part 6 mask. Now, the blog also says there were at least 2 masks pulled for Part 8, both almost certainly cast from the Part 6 mask. Give them the wide salad-shaped bowl that cracked through the mouth. Now, the hero mask seen through most of the film was pulled in a thick, clear thermoplastic, painted silver on the back with a yellow ochre color on the front. Then partially weathered with a lighter yellow. Weathering was done with a small, sharp object and some additional black washes to make the mask look older. Now, there was a second mask made during the acid scene and for some promotional materials. Now, according to Mario, it popped up on eBay back in 2004 or 2005 for $20,000 and went unsold. It still may be in the possession of one of the film's producers. Back then, 20 grand, that is insane. And keep in mind, that's USD. Okay, we're moving on to Jason Goes to Hell again. Another beautiful fold-out page right there of the costume and the hockey mask from the film. Now, Mario goes on to say, to create the different hockey masks for Jason Goes to Hell, The Final Friday, an extra blank from John Carl Buechler's Friday the 13th, Part 7, The New Blood, was used as a basic pattern from which to start. From Buechler's design, like the all-around trim shape, as well as details from the previous films, like the propeller and axe cut, were adopted for the new mask. Different versions of this final design were crafted by vacuum forming sheets of plastic. Unique markings were added over the vacuum formed blanks to match the storyline. A quote-unquote clean version with less damage was used until Jason was blown to pieces, and then additional scrapes and burns were added as the film progressed after Jason returned. Now, jumping from the book back to the blog, you can see them sculpting the Jason prosthetic with a hockey mask. So it was, like I said, recast from a leftover promotional pull from Part 7 and likely the mask in this photo. Now, also, there were 9 masks painted for the film. Effects artist Bill Hunt made all of the post-explosion masks and pulled them in LW10 run resin. But Mario also noted that the hero masks used in the opening scene and the finale were made from vacuum formed plastic. So a bit of both, which is interesting. Now, moving on to Jason X, even though these hockey masks, the regular one and the Uber Jason mask, have no lineage to the previous screen use hockey mask, I still want to touch on it in this book because it's actually fascinating. They're essentially starting from scratch. They wanted to do something different with the design, but also new materials this time around. So Stephen Dupee served as the makeup effects supervisor, and he was responsible for the design and the creation of the hockey mask. He wanted the look for the mask to incorporate a more angular appearance compared to the previous versions. The objective was to create even more of a visual contrast compared with the rubber mask that was used in the last third of the movie. For the first time in the series, an entirely new design with no direct lineage to the original hockey mask from Part 3 was established. Now, new materials were chosen as well. Instead of vacuum form plastic, this mask was made from fiberglass padded with a foam on the insides for somewhat of a comfortable fit. The leather straps, now this is interesting, the leather straps were actually reused belts. The repurposed belts feature the manufacturer's information stamped inside. I love stuff like that, man. Pre-existing belts. Be cool to get that brand name and actually see if you can find those belts online, like on eBay or something. Now, when it comes to the Uber Jason hockey mask, which is a complete and utter departure from what we're used to, the beaten up hockey mask was replaced by a cyber-style mask that was designed and created by Steven as well. Fabricated from fiberglass, it was painted silver with blue and gray accents around the lines. More so, a clear coat was then applied over the surface to create the appearance of a futuristic chrome finish. Not only that, Kane Hodder wore some intense contact lenses that essentially cupped half of his eyes. Once the whole costume's on and Kane's in there, he looks incredible. I actually, even though Jason X is a silly film, Uber Jason is a damn intimidating look for the character. And finally, moving on to Freddy vs. Jason. Nice little pop-out page once again with the costume and the hockey mask used from the film. Most notably, the heavily battle damaged one. Now, you guys have probably seen this before. This is a replica from the screen-used mold for Freddy vs. Jason for the regular-looking hockey mask. So the mold was acquired by Sean Clark, and Josh Luderman, aka Crazy Dog, painted 20 of these. Well, he offered 20 unpainted and painted ones. I scored number 19. So the fact that this comes from a screen-used mold, very, very cool. So this is the regular, cleaner looking one, but we're going to be talking about the battle damage one. Now, keep in mind, there is no direct lineage to the previous screen-used mask when it comes to Freddy vs. Jason. But still cool nonetheless that Mario had one of these hockey masks in his collection. Not only that, the costume as well. Now, the late great Bill Tezaraka, special effects makeup coordinator at WTC Productions, was charged to design and create the hockey mask for Freddy vs. Jason. This was not an easy task because the mask was built from scratch. However, this time around using resin with fiberglass as opposed to vacuum forming as per usual with the previous masks. That was the route that they went. Now, this resulted in a mask that was much more durable and stable. The outer shell was made from resin in combination with layers of painted fiberglass, while the inside, now this is interesting, was entirely covered with some sort of a thinner neoprene, possibly for comfort as well. Now, with these particular battle damage hockey masks, as far as I know, as far as I've seen and heard, like with research and what Sean Clark has also said, these weren't out of a mold. Well, they came out of a mold, but the battle damage was added later using a Dremel. So it's quite interesting. Each of these battle damage masks are unique. They probably have their own identifying marks, scratches, and stuff like that if they're all made individually. But obviously, coming from the original screen-used mold. So now that all that's said and done, let's take a look at this brilliant family tree that the blog has made for us. So a quick and dirty genealogy of the Friday the 13th movie mask. Obviously, we have Ground Zero, we have the OG one, the 1970s Fibro Sport masks, that the Part 3 Hero mask, the Part 3 Stunt mask, which became the Part 4 Hero, Part 5 Hospital Scene mask came from, the Part 5 Yard mask, aka the Hollywood Museum mask. Now, from the Part 3 Stunt mask, we got the Part 5 Roy mask, as well as the Part 5 Graveyard mask. Now, from the TV Spot Hockey mask, we go down to all Part 6 masks, as well as the Part 7 Hero mask. Now, diverting from the Part 6 mask, we go down to Part 8. And from the Part 7 mask, we go down to the Jason Goes to Hell hockey mask. So there you go, guys. It's such a fascinating insight and just how incestuous it all is with how these masks were made, what they're derived from, and it just makes sense. Carry it over from the previous film. If you've got it there, it's a money saver to mold, use as reference, or just use once again, but add different looking chevrons, a different looking weathering finish, stuff like that. Again, like I said, my favorites are definitely the Part 4 mask, which is derived from the Part 3 Stunt mask, and the Part 7 mask, the new blood mask. So that being said, drop a comment below. Let me know your favorite hockey mask. A massive thank you to Mario Kirner for giving me the opportunity to own this beautiful coffee table book. I will leave his details down below, as well as the Jason Lives in 1980s blog. It's a damn good post. There's even a great post about how they supposedly painted the original Part 3 mask. That's definitely something you should go check out if you are also wanting to paint your own Part 3 mask. It's a great insight. So that being said, guys, we are Halloween Eve. Tomorrow we are supposedly getting the first trailer for Scream 7, which just kind of came out of nowhere. So I'm on standby for that. The following morning, I'm going to be doing a live stream of Robert Englund's Star on the Walk of Fame ceremony. So that'll be a bit of fun. Haven't done a live stream in ages, but we're going to be watching that and just shooting the shit with you guys. So make sure to tune in for that one. Love you guts, and I'll catch you in the next one.